The number one thing that people make mistakes on is actually not following recipes.
Look, we'll get straight into it. Look, this is at the point where I've wanted to sit down with Andy for a while, and I think I've been I have been looking forward to this, and I've been consuming a lot of Andy's content on LinkedIn. He seems to be pretty hot on it. But Andy, how are you? Let us know how you are.
I'm great, thank you. Thank you for having me on today. Really appreciate that.
No worries at all. Alex, how are you, mate? We got your text issues sorted, but how are you?
All good, can't complain. The sun is shining, Wimbledon is on, it's summer, could be worse.
Exactly that. Look, to get straight into it, Andy, just for the context of the listeners, can you just give us a bit of context around yourself, your role, and what Target Transfers do as a business?
Yeah, so I'm the marketing manager here at Target Transfers. So for me, that is looking after the UK and Ireland and little bits of Europe. But we're a garment, materials and machine supplier for anyone who wants to decorate T-shirts, hoodies, you name it. So anything like, for instance, anyone that's watching, I've got these logos on my hoodie. Basically, send your design to us, we put it onto a piece of paper, and you can put it onto what we call a heat press. And then 12 seconds later, you've got a branded garment. So Target Transfers are the leading supplier for machines and materials in the UK, but we're also part of the Stahls Group, which is the world's leading supplier of these machines and materials as well. And they've been doing that for about 90 years now. So anything that you've got that's probably got a slogan on or a little badge on it that's not embroidered, there's a chance that it's got a Stahls, Hotronics or Target Transfers touch point on there somewhere along the line.
Yeah, cool. I think that immediately when I think of garment printing, and when I've had it from before, has been, it's been really very much a B2B space for me, and where I kind of think of that. But I want to dive into a little bit about your B2B stuff, but equally your B2C stuff, and how the kind of the marketing is either different or the same. I think Alex wants to dive into a little bit about that as well, because I think it's an interesting topic. But I think where's your target audience and where do you directly serve? I suppose, is your B2B area bigger than your B2C? Talk to us a little bit about your market and how you go about that.
To be honest with you, at the moment, the rules have changed so much over the last couple of years that it's so blurred now. Where before, like I say, if we went 3 years ago, it was quite offline. There's a lot of big B2B customers, and then probably only a small amount of startups that are actually in our database and kind of regularly ordering. But over the last few years, we've just seen that change. It's not just a case of actually there is a lot more startups. We've been onboarded more customers in the last 2 years than probably the previous 10 years.
Wow,
It's so many people who've been sitting at home, do you know what, actually, I'd like to start my own clothing brand. And because it's so inexpensive to get started, it's entry-level machine is about £700, and the actual minimum order is £60. And you can get a lot done with a little, basically. So there's a lot of our actual customer makeup's changed a lot. So that means that the way we speak to our customers has changed a bit. But I would also say, because of the way that our existing larger companies even consume their content, actually the way they want to consume it is more as a consumer than actual business to business conversation. They want it to be a bit more informal, they want it to be more educational, and they want to actually have much more of an interaction with us about it, and more of a conversation rather than just be like, here's the best, now next move on. It's actually, tell me about it, get into a bit more detail about it, and really want to be educated and inspired at every level.
Yeah, it's interesting to say that, because I think we are actually in a position as a payment provider where we're in a similar boat. I think Alex could probably agree, where the markets that we kind of fish in are, there is a certain tendency that we feel like we do need to educate our market as to exactly what we sell, how we do it, what are the benefits of certain areas, of how you integrate, all these different kinds of things. And I suppose that's why I like LinkedIn, because you can educate a market, you can educate your audience, and then hopefully, you know, they'll come to you when they next think about garments, or they next think about a payment provider, or whatever it might be. You're at the forefront of their mind when that happens. I think that's really interesting. Have you got anything to go on that, Alex?
Do you know what? It's actually kind of one of the main things that I wanted to pick your brains on. Is exactly that. It's interesting how the lines have blurred now between B2B and B2C. So I guess, you know, looking back, you know, years gone by, two very, very different channels of communication, right? So, you know, B2C, look, you didn't necessarily have a direct line of communication with that individual. It was about what was the mass marketing approach, what are the channels we can use, you know, really old school traditional TV, radio, printed. Then it moved into, you know, kind of social media and that sort of stuff. So that was B2C. And then B2B, it was, well, look, if you had a B2B audience you were selling to, that's why you had a sales team, because that was your line of communication to the customer, right? It was cold calling, you know, knocking doors, sending out emails, attending, I guess, expos and shows and stuff like that, right? But I guess actually, if you look at the demographic of business leaders, decision makers, you know, they're now that kind of, those younger generations who, you know, when I think the key bit you talked about is how they consume information. Actually, how they consume information in their personal life is exactly how they really want to consume information in their business life as well. And actually, you know, the last 5 years especially, there's been a real big shift from businesses wanting to actually get their message out in those more social media formats and other channels where, you know, people are actually going to be using one area, one format to consume information, whether that be for personal reasons or for business reasons. So I guess it'd be really interesting to hear from your side of things that how as a business, you know, you've operated like that, you know, how maybe you've made that transition, and more from a B2B side is actually how you use that to maybe support, you know, your commercial and your sales teams with their B2B operations, using which is maybe perceived as more traditionally B2C style of marketing.
Yeah, I think it's to be honest with you, it's not been too bad. I mean, from my point of view, so I've been at Target Transfers for about 4 years, and it took a little while to make a few changes here and there, but once you show some results, then everyone else starts buying, as you know, anyway. But I would say that I think, because the way I always explain it to people who start new here is that, you know, is to forget about what you think they might want to be educated on. But the thing to remember is that everyone's nerdy about something. And in our industry, so for instance, it's garment decorating. So actually talking about it in a real fine detail without being sort of isolating new people, they're like, yeah, that's what I really want to know. In the same way that I'm sure it's true for your customers. Actually, if you start talking about each different integration you can have into it, you might think, well, actually, that's a bit boring because it's just finance. But actually, they really want to hear it. Yeah, how can I do Apple Pay? How can I do Google Pay? They'll actually really want to know about it. So that's what we always say is actually, by putting yourself in their shoes and thinking actually what would they actually are interested in, this sort of educational information. And because our customer base is so broad, I mean, we can literally anything that can have sort of any kind of garment decorate, any kind of garment, so it could be any industry. They're like, okay, I'm really interested. And we have a lot of fulfillment companies who could also do any of those industries. So actually, they're like, yeah, tell me about how to make a leavers hoodie, because I never thought about it. But actually, there's 10 schools within 2 miles of me, and they've got, 3,000 students across all of them. So I could make £20 on each one, that sort of thing. So actually, they're like, okay, yeah, actually, you've been in Target. We've been here for 40 something years, and as I say, Stahls is 90 years. So there's not much that we haven't covered across that base. So there's a lot of information that we can draw on and be like, actually, do you know what? We can help your business grow. And they're like, thanks, that's brilliant. I'll come back to you. And then they start to phone up our sort of traditional sales team. Actually, I saw that thing on Facebook. That was really interesting. Can you tell me a bit more of that? Can you send me a sample? I'm thinking about getting into that, and it starts to really just balloon and snowball quite a lot that way.
And on that, so look, you mentioned about creating, I guess, this content. Like I said, kind of quite nerdy, but you're exactly right? Because when you're in a particular sector, well, guess what? You become quite specialised interest in that. So although I guess to the wider audience might say nerdy, that's relevant to the space you operate in. But what's really interesting is that when you mentioned about that content, and actually it's about educating. It's really very specific to those people and what's going to generate a spark of interest, or make them think slightly differently. What are the pieces of content that you guys actually produce, or what are you actually using on your kind of social media platforms and other channels to actually promote that message and get that out there?
Okay, so in terms of the content, a lot of it is actually, so for instance, we kind of look at it, so what's the problem we need to solve with this piece of content, I guess, ultimately. And the number one thing that people make mistakes on is actually not following recipes. So everything we do is recipe based. So you put the transfer under a heat press for 12 seconds and it goes at 145 degrees for that one. But everything we do has a slightly different variation to it. But if you don't follow the instructions, it doesn't work. So that's when people make mistakes. That's when people have complaints because they don't do it. So first off is actually, let's start with content that's going to make sure that they have a better product themselves, because there's actually so many mistakes. There's so many people that actually, that's the way we've always done it. So that's the way the previous person told me to do it. So that's how we do it. So actually, no, let's just start from the beginning. So even though some of these customers we've had for 20 years, so actually, no, let's stop. And let's kind of start putting those sort of building blocks in place, start building the foundations of education from the beginning, even for the most advanced customers, because chances are they're all making mistakes somewhere along the line, even if it's either they're with the way they're applying and they don't realise that something they do could not have an impact for, say, 2 months down the line when something's been washed 10 times and then it starts to come off because they didn't follow the instructions in the original place. So we create that we kind of work out what problem we're trying to solve, and then, okay, that's how are we going to get this in front of people. So, I mean, thankfully for us, Facebook and Instagram are still very strong platforms. There's no kind of people not wanting to separate work and pleasure, I guess, with that platform for us, because what they do is quite, they really want to get into detail. They really want to ask questions, so they don't mind interacting in that respect. Where I've worked in companies previously when it's been a bit more like, actually, no, they've got no interest in interacting on Facebook about something because it's like a medical device company, for instance, one I used to work at, it just didn't work. But for this one, actually, do you know what, they're engaged with it because there's a lot of weekend warriors, and actually, they want that's how they learn, because and in our industry, it's a billion pound industry in the UK, but no one else is educating anyway. So actually, let's create the content and then work out the best way to serve that up on every single platform that we can possibly do, and just keep repeating that and have a consistency of that.
Do you think that sometimes, because I think it's about the whole education piece. Some marketing teams could maybe see that as giving too much information away for free, or whatever it might be, as in, so you might print a t-shirt, you show people how to do it, but what's to stop them going and doing it themselves and never buying from you ever again? So I suppose the question is, how do you differentiate what you give away versus actually, we probably shouldn't share that because that's unique to us?
I mean, to be honest with you, we wouldn't necessarily share how we made the transfer, because that's where the secret sauce is. So we wouldn't show the whole cradle to grave of actually manufacturing transfer. We can show bits of it, so you can see just the scale that we're doing at it and how long we're doing it. We've got a big warehouse in every continent with these machines, and we're manufacturing 24 hours a day. So we can share that. Wouldn't share the magic, because there's lots of things with our production team that they do where they understand the product. So that ultimately means that we have a better product than everyone else. So in terms of like actually educating people how to use products successfully, we just kind of, with Stahls, they've always been at the forefront. So they've always been what's next anyway. So it's fine if someone wants to, they could take our content and copy it verbatim, but it doesn't matter, because in a month's time, we're launching our next piece of content we've been thinking of for the next year. And because they're only copying, they're going to always be a year or two behind anyway. So we just kind of, you just kind of have to take it on the chin that someone's going to copy something anyway. But to be honest with you, with a lot of the time, we find that actually, if they were a serious competitor, they would have already done it before us anyway. So you just have to be like, yeah, that's fine. It happens. Yeah.
I suppose sharing content for free, it almost comes down, sharing we'll share this with you because we know it works. However, we will find the next thing.
Yeah.
So we don't mind sharing this one with you now, because we'll probably find the next thing and we'll share that with you as well. And when we share that one, we'll have the same mindset, which is we'll probably find the next thing as well. So we'll share that. So I suppose like you say, it's about, if someone's going to copy you, let them copy you, because they're probably not the ones thinking of the next thing.
Yeah.
And that's what you're spending your time doing. No, it's really interesting, actually. I think for the context of other marketing managers that are listening, what does you and your team's normal day look like? You know, are you out there on TikTok finding trends? Are you trying to fit in with certain trends that are on the platforms? You know, what does your normal day look like?
A bit of everything, really. We've always got lots of new projects on the go, new products. So, actually, you know, for instance, we just released a new transfer technology a month ago in the UK. So at the moment, a lot of our focus is around that, making sure we're educating properly on that, making sure that there's lots of people making mistakes with that already who have the variations of the technology. Lots of people getting bitten because they're spending lots of money developing this technology, and it's very complicated to create stuff. It's like, I guess the best way to explain it perhaps for your audience is that when we talk about manufacturing transfers, we do things like we have certain adhesives and powders, but there's so much sort of, there's probably thousands of years of knowledge within our company across all the continents, but it's a bit like the people that are actually coding your payment platforms, that's the equivalent of. So it's really quite complicated. So that's why it's very difficult to just take something off the shelf and start doing it. So for instance, for us, it's a kind of, what is the current product we need to promote? But then also always making sure in the back of our mind is actually making sure we're not forgetting everything else. So it's great to have a new toy, but if you forget to actually talk about your core products and your things that got you to the dance in the first place, then you're going to end up losing somewhere else. So making sure everything's covered. And like I say, because we're quite a broad, have quite a broad audience, it's actually making sure that we might have 10 different audience projects on the go at one time, and making sure that we're serving all of them to the appropriate level, based on what the return could possibly be of each one. But that will be across every platform. So we try and bank stuff up, so we're not always like, we need to make a TikTok video today. It's actually, no, we need to spend half the day making 5-10 TikTok videos, and then we can release them over a week. So that way you can actually be a lot more efficient with how you use your time and energy that way. And you tend to find you get onto a bit of a roll. So sometimes you might record 2 podcasts in a row, or we might record 10 educational videos. They're all 3 minutes at a time, and spend a couple hours doing that, and then they can be edited over the next month or two. So just making sure that we're organized, and always trying to just keep educating. Educating is kind of one of the main pillars of target transfers and Stahls. So making sure that we're always providing value, and always making sure that we are talking to customers about what they want to hear about rather than what we want to talk to them about. I guess that's the key thing, really.
And I think that actually ties into a part that I wanted to tap into, which is, how do you differentiate the difference between brand and marketing? Because I actually think they're two different things, but they seem to be the same. I think branding is the why we do things, and the marketing is how we do things. And I suppose, how do you differentiate which one's which? And, you know, if you create a TikTok, well, what is it? Is this a brand building exercise, or is this a marketing exercise? I mean, do you think about that? Is that something that you address?
Yeah, I think so. And I think for us, we really have to think about it, because we do have multiple brands within the company. We do have a parent company which has a stronger brand historically than us. But the Target Transfers brand, which is, because we're fully owned by Stahls, so we are Stahls UK essentially, but Target Transfers has had its own brand for 40 years in the UK, so it makes sense to have that to be the dominant brand. But it's also always, before I started, they always used to kind of refer to themselves as the brand behind the brand, which doesn't really mean anything, to be honest with you, and doesn't really have much growth potential. So it's something we've been changing. So actually, for us, with brand, the main balance is actually making sure that we are building the Target Transfers brand, because it's getting more traction with new products we've got, the way with new websites we've launched. It's actually growing in the UK, but actually making sure that we're still keeping the key brand principles of Stahls and Stahls Electronics as well. But yeah, I would agree with you in terms of how we approach brand and marketing on each platform. We like to have a bit of a balance, because it's always important to just remind customers who we are, because there is brand recognition. You know, we see it at events, for instance, when we've had one of those recently, and they see the big Stahls logo there, they come and they know, because Stahls has such a big educational footprint as well across the US and the globe. They're like, oh, okay, yeah.
Yep.
They take it seriously when they see that, so we have to make sure that we're kind of keeping to that. And then in regards to the sort of how, it's actually just making sure, again, it's educational. Is it going to add value to this customer? That's kind of the key thing, really. Are we doing this just because we think we should be making a video? And if that's the case, don't make the video. Go back and really think about it then.
Yeah, no, I agree. Anything to add, Alex?
No, I think the only thing I was going to ask was, just in terms of the marketing. You mentioned there's loads of different channels, and it's all, marketing's always a mix, right? You know, and it's about, just because you've got a new toy, don't forget about the core stuff and kind of balancing that all. Yeah. Since you came to the business, you mentioned 4 years ago, what do you think has been, I guess, the most promising or the thing that you've implemented that has seen the biggest impact and made the biggest change in terms of boosting growth, boosting brand, and getting the name out there?
I think to be honest, if I was to choose one platform, I'd say probably YouTube, because a lot of the content we create there can then turn into content for every other platform. I find that with the team here, it makes a lot of sense to create that sort of 3 to 5 minute video, and then we can kind of build down from there. Okay, how can we use this for, it might be we never use it for Instagram or Facebook, but it starts the internal conversation. Okay, that something like that would work, so let's just film a separate video that works a version of that, which is great. But we've also had really good traction over the last couple of years with doing live video on YouTube as well. So we've had some really good conversions through that. And I'd just like to kind of mention that, for instance, in 2020, our US colleagues on the Stahls channel, they went live every single day for about 6 months doing education content, things like that. But the growth was massive. They're at nearly 300,000 YouTube subscribers now. So I'd say that's the kind of platform that's kind of really been a difference maker, because not just stuff that we've done, but stuff that's been done within our group of companies as well, has then had a massive impact on us, because then people start to come in. We do lots of one-to-one events and events here on site, and they come in and say, I saw that video on Stahls press versus an import press. It was amazing. And they come in, and they don't really need to be here more than 2 minutes, because they've already decided they want to buy something. They already know what it is, because they've made an informed decision before they've even got in the car to drive here. And I guess
that's that thing, isn't it? We go back to about getting a message across in a consumable format. The fact is, it's really difficult to get one-on-one time with somebody to get that message across to them directly, because that's not how you access your customer base, and that's not how they generally consume information. If you can get that information to them in the format that they want to consume, like you said, they're probably almost at least halfway down that kind of buying journey, aren't they? It's maybe just ask a couple of quick questions, check out these points, maybe there's some kind of commercial discussion, and then it's about getting it over the line and maybe seeing the product in person. But that key bit is kind of using those channels to get them halfway down that journey already. And I love the point you mentioned about using something like YouTube and creating a video, because you could use that video as standalone, but the fact is, everything within that video, 10 seconds here, 30 seconds there, a minute there, can be clipped up, rechopped, and used for countless additional content that you can use, in loads of other posts and actually lots of other channels as well. Right? Just gets a YouTube video doesn't mean you can't put it on TikTok or Instagram or LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever else. Right? It's about just having that kind of core product that you can have, and then dispersing it outwards from there.
Yeah. Have you explored, because we literally were chatting before the podcast, and we were saying around the whole kind of TikTok live shopping, all that kind of stuff. I think your product is such a cool thing that you could do on live shopping. I've seen things on TikTok where people will order sweets, and someone will put together their pack and their sweets and this, that, and then they'll send it out and they'll pay for it there and then on the live shopping. Is that something that you've looked into or explored? Print someone's design in their t-shirt there and then live on TikTok, or is that something that you'd even debate doing?
It's possible. I would say that, to be honest with you, we're so busy at the moment. We have a quick turnaround. So everything we do is 2-day turnaround, which is faster than anyone. So it's if we were to do it, we'd have to do it at the expense of an existing customer. So I think we'd always be a little bit unsure about the value of doing that. But in terms of like actually, if someone wanted to buy a roll of raw material, I mean, there's no reason we couldn't just take one off the shelf, cut it down, and send it on. I think that would be absolutely fine. And I think TikTok Live is an exciting option because obviously there's so much attention there, which is number one. Okay, I'm interested. I think having sat on a few of their sort of marketing webinars on it, it's not quite there for what we do, where it's a slightly more expensive product, or for us it's a customized product. So you can actually do the transfers. You have to go onto our platform to do it. You can't do that into another site. But I think the main thing that kind of niggles at me is that they're a bit vague on the API integrations. So for me, my because we have customers, then we kind of build a long-term relationship with customers. It's not a one-off. You buy a pair of trainers and that's it. Maybe you buy another pair in 6 months. It's actually, I buy a heat press, and then I want to talk to you once a month about my transfers. It's actually how that builds into the rest of our CRM platforms. That's kind of the thing. Like, okay, once everything starts to talk together, then I'm like, okay, becomes extremely powerful, and then we're a lot more interested at that point.
So talk to us a little bit. I mean, I think it'd be rude for us not to touch on payment platforms, considering what we do and what we do at Truvo. But talk to us a little bit about how a payment platform is important for your online journey and your conversion rates, because I think that's something that probably doesn't get talked about enough. And equally, we've seen from our end how important a slick checkout journey can be when converting online sales. You know, converting more browsers to buyers, making sure there's no friction within your checkout, all this kind of thing. What's your thoughts on that? I mean, how important is that to you as a business?
I think it's very important. It needs to be seamless. It really does. It needs to be seamless, because that's kind of, I mean, we are the best at what we do, but there's people who do similar stuff to us, and if theirs is going to be marginally easier to work with, then that might be enough of a deal breaker. I mean, I think I saw something you put up on LinkedIn the other day, George, about where you've done a bit of a poll about what payment platforms people like to use on their phone now, and you can see that it's changed quite a lot over the last year. And actually, with things like Apple Pay payment plan coming up soon, they're like, oh, actually, do you know what? I'll do that. Where before it kind of used to be, actually, if you're in a different room to your wallet, and you're like, actually, okay, if they can pay on PayPal, I'll do it now. And now you're like, actually, do you know what? If I can do a double click on the side of my phone, I'll do it now instead. Everything's always evolving, so you always have to be okay, how does the customer want to buy this product? Is it going to be easy? Do they have to ask a question about it? Because if they do, then they might just be like, do you know what? I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. Then you're not going to convert a new customer from a competitor that way. So that's something that we always think about a lot. And you know, when we relaunch our websites, however often we do that, we always think, okay, is the payment platform smooth? Does it work? Has it got a few different options now? I'd say that's a good thing for us. It's actually, can you just put your credit card details in on site, or can you pay with PayPal, depending on what the customer wants to do? That's an important one. And I think one of the reasons that we've always been successful in the UK and in the US is actually, it's not just with transfers. It's a complicated process, because it could be a giant image file. It can be very detailed. So you need to have a site that can handle that. But then you also actually, going back to our discussion at the beginning about how businesses interact with our company, it's actually a lot of what you might consider key accounts actually now buy their transfers online, because it's so easy. They actually, you know what? Yeah, I can do it any time of the day. Where historically in the UK, it's always used to be I phone up or I send an email. I have to wait 3 hours to get a response, and then we go back and forth. It could take you a week to buy something, and now it's 5 minutes, because we need to change how we serve our customers. So actually, the payment thing is massive, because it's how easy it is, but it's also actually factoring things like, can our customers pay, who are an account customer, can they pay on account as well when they're ordering stuff? Making sure that's seamless, so anyone in the business can order. They can just go online, they can, okay, yeah, that's the artwork, we need to order 100 of those, 1,000 of that one, click, and done. They're on the way. Or they just come in, pre-order, card details in, and they're done. It's a 5-minute job, because ordering from your supplier shouldn't be the most time consuming part of your day. You need to make sure you empower your customers to actually get on with either manufacturing or doing sales and marketing. That's where they make
It's really
money.
interesting you mentioned about the customer journey, actually even in a B2B space, because again, customer journey, we always think, it's all about B2C, because that's where customer journey is really important. And actually people think, if it's a B2B space, well, I'm working with this person, so I can kind of get away with having a clunky website or a clunky customer journey because they're going to buy from me anyway. But actually, maybe that's not always the case. Or actually, even if they have got limited options and maybe they're not necessarily going to have lots of different people they can buy from. Look, the fact is, as a business, you're there as a supplier to make your customer's life as easy as possible. And every touch point you have with them, however small it is, should try and be as slick as possible, to build loyalty, build credibility, and make people want to work with you. And actually, even if in a B2B space, that's as small as giving them a good payment journey, it counts. And especially, as we've touched upon, the fact that people consume information and do things in a different way now than they did 5-10 years ago. 5-10 years ago, like I said, people would have, if they were account customers, called up, sent an email. Now they're going straight on the website, because guess what? We live and die on our phones. I know George, bought an iPad a year ago and it's now collecting dust in his cupboard. I've got a MacBook that my wife and I bought a few years ago. And again, it's sitting in the cupboard collecting dust because we just do everything on our phones. And in a B2B space, that's no different, right? One thing I was going to ask, and look, you mentioned because I guess the majority of your traffic, even in the B2B side of things, comes to the website now. So early in the year, we had the implementation of SCA, strong customer authentication. So at checkout now, people have to then go through a two-factor authentication, enter your card details, then you have a one-time passcode, wherever it is, sent to your phone to authorize that transaction. Have you seen any kind of drop off in sales or any effect in terms of that conversion through the website, or has there been any feedback from customers about that changing that checkout process for them?
Not really, to be honest with you. I think because they have to do that for absolutely everything, so it means that they're used to it. So if you buy something in your personal life, there's a good chance it's going to happen now. You spend more than say £100 to a couple £100. It happens nearly every time now. So I don't think people are at a kind of that put out there. I think I've had probably 2 occasions where someone's mentioned something to our customer service team in the last 6 months. So it's like, if that, for that, me, it's a non-issue entirely. So no, I've not really had any issues with that at all, to be honest with you. I think it's been pretty smooth for us. But then again, that is because we've spent time to make sure we have a good payment platform to make sure the process is smooth. I'm sure that if someone, for instance, was on an older web platform, I imagine that there's probably all kinds of problems they've run into over this last 6 months if they haven't been keeping up to date with their upgrades. I imagine that there's probably a lot of payments you haven't even noticed that would have failed and dropped off and they just haven't ordered.
And I guess that's probably the key bit, right? You mentioned there, you're obviously really hot on your websites and you've done your due diligence and you've kind of been updating it and making sure that actually everything is seamless. So, because you've looked at things in the last kind of 6 and 9 months, you're on it. And any tweaks that you needed to make to ensure your payment platform, I guess, is built to work seamlessly with the implementation of SCA, then great. Actually, if you haven't looked at your payments platform in the last 6 to 9 months, or if you're or maybe even longer for a lot of businesses, let's be honest, because sometimes it's not at the top of their agenda. Actually, you're right. And to your point, there might be a load of organic drop off they're not even noticing, but it's because they haven't haven't reviewed it. So I guess it makes sense that businesses like yourself who have been hot on it, great, and you're probably taking the right steps. If businesses haven't looked at it in that period of time, maybe they should heed what you do and actually take a look at it and make sure it's up to date.
I agree. I think, just conscious on time, a couple of closing out bits really. What kind of advice would you have for other marketing managers or marketing teams in regards to how they can succeed in 2022 leading into 2023? Are there any sort of nuggets of information that you've got, having got the experience that you have?
I think the main thing is what is your content strategy? Why are you doing it? How are you going to do it? And making sure you're actually doing it. Lots of people spend a lot of time thinking, I'll do it when I've got this, I'll do it when I've got that. I mean, we're very fortunate. I'm sitting in a fantastic showroom and education space now. It took us a long time to get here, and we could have very easily been like, do you know what? Yeah, we got that in November, so that's when we'll start doing better content. But actually, we made a very conscious effort. But actually, no, let's just take that pokey little meeting room and do everything we can with it. Don't wait for tomorrow. Just get stuck in, get it done. And because everything's just us doing our podcast now, as there's so many people that probably be very uncomfortable doing that because, I can't talk on that. I'm not very comfortable being on camera, and I would say that that kind of sums me up as well. That's not my core skill set, but you have to kind of remember, okay, is this going to benefit what I'm doing? Is it going to benefit the business? And you have to just put that ego aside or whatever it is to just get stuck in, basically, and kind of, but also make sure you're always providing value to your customers. That's a big one. And one thing that we kind of always like to touch on internally is there context to what we're doing here? So if the customer comes on, always kind of take the approach of, if a customer sees this and it's the first time they see it, will they understand it? Will they understand it? And we also at the same time not patronize an existing customer, but always making sure that it's always relatable. Don't just get too far down the rabbit hole. And when I talk about going into nerdy detail, it's great, but you kind of also got to make sure that people understand it in the first instance.
Yeah, and I think that because a lot of a big word that I seem to be throwing around at the moment, I think we touched on this on the phone call in the midweek, Andy, was the word authentic. The word authentic is being thrown out there quite a bit in the world of marketing and brand. And I mean, how do you stay authentic? Is it something that you can actually put a number on to say, do you know what? This is how you stay authentic? Or is it just something that you just have as a marketing team? We're an authentic team. We don't overthink things. We don't overthink our content. How can a marketing team or manager stay authentic?
Do you know, a good one for us, and that's going back to the live video. So something that we do, and we try to do it once a week, and it probably ends up being sort of 3 out of every 4, is we do a live, and we probably spend 45 minutes doing a live video where we take everything from start to finish. So we're actually using the machines, we're using our transfers, or we're using our vinyl. Sometimes we're even showing people how to artwork. But because we're doing it live, you can't really have smoke and mirrors there. So when people watch it, okay, look, I'm going to fuse this transfer now, and I'm going to pick it to the camera, watch me peel it, and then you can see the actual end result. I think that's how we've helped to stay authentic, is because people, they watch long and I can do that. I understand that now. They can ask a question and we can give an honest answer. And we've always kind of been very authentic and honest, even on a live video. And sometimes actually, do you know what, I'm thinking about doing this, but actually, do you know what, don't buy the most expensive machine because it's not worth it. You need to scale sensibly, because that way the customer will be a customer in 5 or 10 years time, because you've been honest at the beginning. So that's something that's kind of a core principle across everything we do and I think that's probably why people see us as authentic. It's because we're always very honest with customers. But a good way for anyone that's sort of starting is do it with a live video, because customers can see through everything now. They're intelligent enough, so if you try and hide something in that video, they'll see it. But if you've got a good enough product, you won't have to hide it.
That's the key, isn't it? And it's all about proof of concept as well. You can really over-engineer, over-market it, tailor something up. But actually, if you've got a visible representation of what it is, and even better, if it's in live context, like you said, when you haven't had the chance to take it away, maybe edit things, etc. Like you said, there's no hiding place. You've got a good product. Here it is, guys. No smoke and mirrors. It does what it says on the tin, and everything we're saying is true. And that even if they don't necessarily know you as a business, as a brand, because they've seen that, it's instant credibility, isn't it? And actually, that's the sort of stuff that then leads to you having great marketing and a great brand, because people think, well, do you know what? Nobody else is doing that. So actually, the proof's in the pudding.
Yeah, agreed. Look, I think we're about out of time. I've really, really enjoyed this one, to be honest. Look, just closing out, Andy, where can people follow you online and on social media? How would people listening to this podcast get hold of you?
So if you're interested in garment decoration, just follow Target Transfers everywhere, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok. We're across pretty much every platform, LinkedIn. If you have questions about something specific that I've spoken about today, if you'd like to get in touch with me direct, just find me on LinkedIn under Andy Rogers at Target Transfers. I'd be more than happy to answer anyone's questions.
Great stuff. I'm sure we'll get everything that's relevant linked in the descriptions of where you're listening. So, Andy, Alex, I really appreciate you taking the time to join us. Thank you very much.
And that's it. That marks the end of another episode. We really appreciate you taking the time to stay all the way to the end. I think that was a really insightful one from Andy and Alex. We want to hear from you, whatever platform you're listening on, whether that makes Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, whatever it might be. We want to hear from you. So please make sure that you like, subscribe, comment on whatever platform, because we do really want to hear from you. So look, until next time, take care.